It was a rainy Friday evening in the heart of the city when Claire nervously adjusted the strap of her faded handbag and guided her little boy Ethan through the glass doors of a softly lit Italian restaurant, her heart pounding with both fear and embarrassment because she knew she was breaking one of the unspoken rules of blind dating. Never, ever bring your child along, but life hadn't given Claire the luxury of rules, and tonight, she had no choice because the babysitter canceled last minute. The rent was overdue, and the thought of missing this one chance at meeting someone decent, maybe even someone who could be more than just a fleeting conversation, felt unbearable. So when the hostess asked her name and she whispered Claire, clutching Ethan's small hand as he hummed happily and clutched his sketchbook, she felt heat rise to her cheeks as they were led to a quiet corner table where a tall, broad-shouldered man in a perfectly tailored navy suit sat with a calm and commanding presence, his dark hair neatly combed back, his sharp jawline softened only by the warmth of his smile as he rose to greet her, extending his hand and saying, "You must be Claire." In a deep voice that made her throat tighten with nerves, she stammered an apology immediately, blurting out, "I am so sorry. I had no one to watch Ethan tonight. I know this is completely unprofessional for a first meeting, and if you'd rather leave, I understand," her words tumbling out in one breath. But instead of the irritation or cold dismissal she feared, the man's expression softened and he crouched slightly so his eyes met Ethan's level, saying with a smile, "And who's this young man?" making Ethan beam as he held up his sketchbook and chirped, "I'm Ethan. I draw superheroes and dinosaurs," which made the man chuckle warmly before looking back at Claire and saying the words that would forever be carved into her memory, "Don't apologize, Claire. I think I'm lucky you brought him." And at that moment, something inside her shifted, like the flicker of hope she thought had died years ago sparked back to life, and as they sat down, Claire studied him carefully, realizing he was far different from the other men she had met through awkward online introductions. There was an aura of quiet power in the way he carried himself, a refinement in the way he held his cup of coffee, and though he had not yet introduced himself properly, she already sensed there was more to him than met the eye, and as the evening unfolded, she would learn just how true that was, because this man wasn't just another stranger on a dating app, he was Daniel Hayes, the CEO of Hayes Enterprises, a name Claire had only seen on billboards and in glossy magazines, a man whose empire stretched across finance, real estate, and technology. Yet here he was, sitting in front of her, listening intently as Ethan showed him crayon drawings, and instead of brushing the child aside, Daniel leaned in, asking questions, laughing at his silly jokes, and complimenting his colorful sketches, all the while making Claire's heart ache because she wasn't used to kindness like this, not from men, not from anyone in years. And as the waiter brought menus, Daniel glanced at her and said gently, "Order whatever you like," but Claire instinctively chose the cheapest dish, embarrassed of her financial struggles, though Daniel noticed. And while she excused herself to take Ethan to the restroom, he quietly asked the waiter to bring extra dishes, appetizers, and even dessert, wanting them to feel cared for, and when they returned, Ethan clapped his hands with delight at the feast on the table, making Claire's eyes water as she tried to hide her gratitude, whispering softly, "You didn't have to," but Daniel interrupted, saying, "Claire, sometimes people deserve more than just what they settle for. Let tonight be special." And those words lodged themselves deep into her heart, stirring a longing she had buried beneath years of exhaustion, and as dinner continued, she found herself laughing, truly laughing, for the first time in months as Daniel shared stories of his travels and childhood mischief, all while Ethan interrupted occasionally with his own tales, which Daniel encouraged with genuine attention, and by the time dessert arrived, Claire realized she hadn't once checked the clock or worried about the bills waiting at home, because for these few hours, she felt seen, valued, and even cherished. And though she tried to remind herself that fairy tales weren't real, that powerful CEOs didn't fall for struggling single moms, there was a part of her heart whispering, maybe. Just maybe. And as the evening ended and Daniel insisted on driving them home in his sleek black car, Claire hesitated, but Ethan was already dozing off in her lap, and Daniel said, "Let me make sure you both get home safely," so she agreed, giving him directions to their small, worn-down apartment, and when they arrived, she felt ashamed as the peeling paint and broken stairwell came into view, but Daniel didn't flinch, didn't comment, he simply carried the sleeping Ethan upstairs as if it were the most natural thing in the world, and laid him gently on the couch with a tender care that made Claire's chest tighten with emotions she could barely contain, and when she whispered another apology for the mess, Daniel simply said, "Don't ever apologize for loving your son the way you do," and with that, he slipped his business card onto the kitchen counter, telling her he wanted to see her again, and as he left, Claire stood there frozen, clutching the card like it was a lifeline. Tears streaming down her cheeks because for the first time in years, she felt like destiny had knocked on her door, and though she didn't know what the future would hold, she couldn't deny the spark ignited that night, one that would change her and Ethan's lives forever. And as she tucked Ethan into bed and looked out the window at the city lights, she whispered a silent prayer of gratitude, unaware that her story with Daniel was only just beginning. And to anyone listening to this story right now, if you feel the same warmth and hope stirring in your heart, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and stay with us, because Chapter 2 will reveal what happens when Daniel steps back into Claire's life and shows her a kind of love and protection she never thought she deserved.